Attention all passengers. Do you want a front row seat for the future of air travel? The Skift Idea Awards are back, and the Airlines and Airports category is where innovation takes flight. From next-gen passenger experiences to bold sustainability moves, we're celebrating the ideas transforming the future of aviation. Airline Weekly Lounge listeners get 50% off their first entry with the code AW50FORYOU. That's AW50FORYOU. Head to live.skift.com to start your submission today.
Hello and welcome to the Airline Weekly Lounge. I'm Jay Shabat and I'm joined today by my colleague Meghna Maharishi. Meghna, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, you're probably wondering where our fearless leader Gordon is here. Why isn't he joining us? Last we heard he was spotted eating a croissant in Paris. And he's in fact at the Paris Air Show. So we will hold down the fort while he's gathering some all the good information from about the aircraft market over in Paris. So Meghna and I will be today. We're going to talk about Virgin Australia, some interesting developments there. We'll also provide a few little commentary on the upcoming third quarter. And some capacity trends there. We should say before doing that, it is Monday, June 16th. We should just express our sympathies for anyone and everyone affected by that awful Air India incident last week. We're certainly not experts in aviation safety or not the kind of thing we write about here, but certainly, you know, we've been our colleagues at Skift have been covering it. I know, Meghna, you have written about it some. We, at this point, we can just hope that investigators can identify and understand the cause so that something like this never happens again. With that said, let's turn our attention to Australia. And I guess I'll start by asking you, Meghna, have you ever been to Australia or flown Virgin Australia?
No, but I would like to go to Australia one day.
Yeah, it's definitely. I was there many years ago and fairly briefly, but I at that time Virgin Australia didn't even exist. This was years ago. No, I take that back. It was a young airline at that time, just a couple of years old. It was in the early 2000s. I did fly Qantas a little bit around the country. But Virgin Australia was always, I shouldn't say always, but for most of its existence, it launched in 2000, I believe. And it was always, or it was, other than those first few years, a rather troubled airline. Qantas routinely would earn much higher profits. And in the past, you may have heard us speak or write in Airline Weekly about Virgin's issues over the years. They really tried to be all things to all people. They were flying 777s to California, and they at one point bought an ultra low cost carrier called Tiger Air, and we can go on and on. But suffice it to say that they were in pretty bad shape, even going into the COVID crisis, and so it was only a matter of months that they had to file for bankruptcy when the crisis hit. But and this is where things start to get interesting. A new investor came in, as Bain Capital, a U.S. private equity company, came in, purchased them, and embarked on a turnaround. New executives. They cut a lot of their costs. They trimmed a lot of a lot of the businesses that weren't doing well, like those 777s I mentioned. Those are gone. So are other wide bodies. And lo and behold, Virgin in the last couple of weeks, they decided that they were going to go public with their shares for the first time since their bankruptcy. Going to relist on the Australian Stock Exchange, and in doing so, they released financial numbers for the first time since the crisis, since their turnaround, and they were actually very good. And believe it or not, their operating margin for 2024 was actually slightly ahead of Qantas. They earned not much ahead, but they earned a 10.8% operating margin, whereas Qantas earned just a 10.6%. So, essentially the same. But it is rather surprising that after so many years of getting beat around by its bigger adversary, Virgin is actually doing rather well now.
Yeah, and also I believe at least a few months ago, didn't Qatar also announce it would take a pretty sizable stake in Virgin as well, which, I mean, at least my understanding at the time was that that could potentially even open up the possibility of going international again.
Yes, that's indeed what happened. So just a couple of months ago, they Virgin, or let's say Bain, which I mentioned, purchased Virgin in bankruptcy. They sold a 25% stake to Qatar Airways. Now, Virgin in the past has been owned by all sorts of different airlines. At one point, they were owned by Etihad, and another piece was owned by Air New Zealand, another piece was owned by Singapore Airlines, and another piece was owned by the group that controlled Hainan Airlines in China, and there was even another Chinese airline involved. Nothing that complex now, but yes, Qatar Airways is a major shareholder, and if some of you listening will know that Qatar is also a major shareholder in IAG and LATAM and some China Southern, I believe, Cathay Pacific, some big, one time tried to buy a piece of American Airlines. So very active airline investor. Got to use all that natural gas wealth on something, I guess. So yes, they are very much a big shareholder in Virgin now. Virgin says that no plans to actually go out and buy our own wide bodies and, restart long haul flying, but they will operate to Doha, to Qatar's hub, with on a wet lease. So it'll be Qatar's planes, but it'll be Virgin Cruise. I believe that's the arrangement. So I guess you could say they are somewhat going back into long haul, but not sort of a long haul light model, you can say.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also curious, what do you make of their recent IPO? I was reading one analyst report that said it is too expensive and kind of overinflating the value. I'm wondering what you think of that.
Yeah, good question. I don't know specifically, what they're pricing at. I don't have an opinion on the equity valuation or anything. I clearly, this is an airline that is financially healthy now, that has a cost structure that enables it to make money now. Now, if there is a concern, and perhaps one is that, maybe they priced it too high relative to their enterprise value. But if there is sort of a longer term concern about their earnings, it might just be that Australia is only so big and there's only so many places you can fly. And so you do wonder, does Virgin run back into that same challenge that they faced 20 years ago, where, okay, we've learned how to make money in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, maybe flying some leisure routes into, Gold Coast, or some of the Cairns, some of the markets up there. Not sure if I said that right, but what I'm talking about, up in Queensland. Maybe a few transcontinental routes over to Perth, but beyond that, okay, we can fly to some of the Pacific Islands that Australians like to take holidays in. But then where, do you start getting mission creep again? Because ultimately, if you run out of places to grow, well, then your costs are going to start creeping up. They did get lucky in that two of their competitors, there's an airline called Rex that was trying to do, full service 737 jets in that Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane triangle. Well, they failed and had to declare bankruptcy. Another startup airline called Bonza tried the same thing. They failed and disappeared. So that sort of gave that was a big help for Virgin. They have a couple of other big strengths as well. I mean, their loyalty program is very profitable. It's called Velocity, and that has always made very hefty margins for them. They do have some more 737 Maxes coming, including some larger ones, the Dash 10 versions. So that'll help them, with to a certain extent in providing some growth opportunity. Here and there they may find opportunities, but you can see where investors might be concerned about their growth prospects long term.
Yeah, well, I guess at least for now, it does seem like travel demand in Australia is pretty healthy, at least from what I've been reading about Virgin and the fact that it's been able to do so well lately.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, that's a little bit about Virgin Australia. We'll see how the IPO goes. We'll see how the coming quarters and years go for them, and to see if they can hold steady with Qantas, or if eventually they kind of revert back to their old ways. So with that, we'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about some trends for the third quarter.
Attention all passengers. Do you want a front row seat for the future of air travel? The Skift Idea Awards are back, and the Airlines and Airports category is where innovation takes flight. From next-gen passenger experiences to bold sustainability moves, we're celebrating the ideas transforming the future of aviation. Airline Weekly Lounge listeners get 50% off their first entry with the code AW50FORYOU. That's AW50FORYOU. Head to live.skift.com to start your submission today.
All right, Meghna, we're back. We're going to talk about some capacity trends for the third quarter. Anything before I begin? I've got some Cirium DO data on seat capacity flown from different airports and different countries here. I'll go over a few highlights. Anything you want to share with our listeners, Meghna, about just some general trends you've seen as far as demand, supply, or cost? Really anything. Could be any worldwide or anything from any specific market.
Yeah, I mean, I remember during all the first quarter earnings calls, like everything seemed very uncertain. Now it seems as if a lot of the demand has sort of stabilized. I think also, at least in the US, a lot of airlines have moderated their capacity, which I guess is also helping. But I think it seems as if right now things are trending a little bit lower than where they were originally expected to be. I think before the tariff announcement came out and everything. I was also kind of reading just another analyst note this past weekend that it also seems as if fuel prices might be creeping back up again, just given everything going on with the Iran and Israel, and that might be another thorn for the industry.
Right. I think that's a pretty good summary. I think things have sort of, as you said, not as bad as some feared back in maybe March, April time period. I think most airlines in the world, in most regions, expect the summer to be pretty good. The demand it seems to be holding up pretty good, but as you also suggested, I think there's still a lot of nervousness out there. One about fuel prices creeping up. They're still at rather low levels, but they are creeping up. And then also, these, I don't think we've seen the end of the story with these tariffs and their potential effect on the U.S. and global economy. So more to come, I think. I don't think there's I don't think we can close that conversation yet, particularly as we get through the northern summer and into the fall. Speaking of the northern summer, so we're speaking on June 16th, so we're just, hard to believe, but we're just, 2-ish weeks away from the end of the second quarter. We do, by the way, have our all the first quarter earnings reports are pretty much now in. Any airline who does report has already done so at this point. Maybe one or two stragglers. I can't think of any, but I think we're pretty much done. So for those of you who are getting Airline Weekly, make sure to stay tuned for a ranking of the the top airlines by profit margins for the second quarter. So we'll run that in our next issue. Now back to my Cirium Dio data here. So we still have nothing abnormal. Top the five busiest. Normally I'd quiz you, Meghna, but I would. If Gordon was here, I'd quiz him. But I'll be nice to you. I'll be nice since you volunteered to substitute for him today. But the top five airports in the world by number of seats: Atlanta number 1, Dubai number 2, Istanbul number 3, Istanbul's main airport, Tokyo Haneda number 4. And Chicago O'Hare number 5. I think they've creeped into the top 5. So now what I did was obviously there's hundreds and hundreds of airports around the world. I don't want to look at all of them because I'm not interested if some tiny little airport is growing by 1,000% or whatever. But just arbitrarily, I made the cutoff 75, the top 75 airports in the world. So the largest by seats. And of those top 75, the fastest growing for the third quarter, this is year over year now, so third quarter this year versus third quarter last year, it's actually Istanbul, but not Istanbul's main airport, but the secondary airport over on the Asian side of the city. The I don't know how to say it, but Gocken, I believe is the spelling. And that airport will see seats up 20% year over year. And that's, it's no surprise. Turkish Airlines is still growing, particularly its low-cost unit, AJet. And then you have Pegasus growing there as well. The rest of the top 10 for the fast growers, they're all pretty much in either one of two broad regions. They're either in East Asia, so we have like Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City up there, Hong Kong growing at 15% now. That's a little bit of catch up. Hong Kong was, took a long time to come out of the pandemic. We also have Saudi Arabia up there. So Jeddah number 5 with 11% growth and Riyadh at number 8 with 10% growth. We also have Istanbul's main airport is actually on there as well, number 9 at 9% growth. So still a ton of growth in just the city in Istanbul in general. Kunming in China is up in the top 10. Now, I'll talk for a minute. I'll get to the sort of the ones at the bottom of the list, but I thought I'd point out, since all of the top 10 were in sort of Asia, Middle East, and Turkey, I thought I'd point out here what's the fastest growing airport in the United States, and again, this is among the top 75 world airports. And the answer is one I just talked about, Chicago. Chicago is actually up 8%, and that may come as a surprise to some, given the fact that Chicago's population isn't really growing. Its economy isn't growing particularly fast, but that's simply kind of a back and forth between American and United, both sort of growing there, jockeying for market share, and in some cases getting some additional gates. So Chicago actually leading the way among big U.S. airports. Number 1 for Europe is actually Copenhagen at 7% growth. So not lighting the world on fire by any means, but 7% growth is pretty solid. And that's really, it's mostly SAS. You can find a few other airlines that are growing there, but SAS, since it sold part of itself to Air France-KLM, is concentrating more of its capacity in Copenhagen. It's always had that kind of 3-hub system, which isn't particularly efficient. I mean, they have Stockholm as well and Oslo as well, but they're putting more of their weaponry, so to speak, in Copenhagen to gain some more critical mass there. I guess final one I'll mention on the some of the faster growing airports is in Latin America. Sao Paulo's main airport, Guarulhos, is growing by 8% as well, and that's pretty much LATAM growing rather aggressively there. So that's your tops. I don't know, before I go on to the some of the losers here, any comments or thoughts on any of those, Meghna?
I mean, I know at least with Chicago, it's interesting to see how much it's grown and is becoming even busier. I was just thinking of like how United and American are kind of beefing at in Chicago over gates. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, surprised me as well. But I guess it shouldn't be too surprising given that American United kind of tussle in the Windy City there. But yeah, there you have it. Detroit, by the way, is number 2 on the list among U.S. carriers, up 6%. And I have a feeling, I did not take a look at the details on that, but I have a feeling that Delta may be rebuilding some of its Asian capacity that has lagged since the pandemic. That could be the case. I believe Spirit is pretty much shrinking everywhere else, but maybe growing in Detroit. But again, I'd have to confirm that. At the bottom end of the scale, and this is one more reminder that we're just talking about the 75 largest, busiest airports in the world here by seats. Charlotte actually comes in at the very bottom. Charlotte seats are down 10%, and that's mostly American. You do see Spirit cutting there. A lot of Spirit's bankruptcy and their very, very hefty cuts are kind of factoring in here on a lot of these U.S. airports that are shrinking. But American is shrinking at Charlotte, even though it is a very profitable hub for them. And some of that is probably just shifting some capacity to Chicago. They're also trying to rebuild some of their northeastern markets following their breakup of that JetBlue joint venture. So Charlotte, Las Vegas is actually right behind. It's down 6%. And we don't think of Las Vegas as a shrinking place. It's been, fast growing for so many years. But that is very much a Spirit and Frontier phenomenon. You'll remember how they just threw so much additional capacity into Las Vegas, just coming out of the pandemic. And that stuff is now starting to come out. We also have, a few other, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Boston, quite a few large U.S. airports will be shrinking this summer. And that goes to your earlier point, Meghna, about how a lot of U.S. airlines, broadly speaking, are cutting capacity given the economic uncertainty tied to tariffs. So yeah, there's quite a lot going on. And the only other thing before we stop here is I did run some capacity trends for country and Vietnam. And again, I had to do a cutoff here because again, I'm not interested if like the Turks and Caicos Islands are running. It's just we want to look at just the very sizable markets here. So I ran the 30 largest country markets. And of those, Vietnam is actually the fastest growing. So their seats this quarter will be up, or next quarter will be up 16%. I mentioned Hong Kong, which is treated as a separate, call it what you want, a country or whatever, but it's treated separately from an aviation perspective. And that will be up 15%. Malaysia's up a lot. I talked about Turkey. I talked about Saudi Arabia. Quite a lot of growth in Thailand and the UAE. And then at the bottom of the list, we have Colombia, which is mostly a case of, I think, some airlines that got a little bit over aggressive. They expanded the slot availability in Bogota, I believe, and there's been some pullback there. Russia, a market that's obviously been has all sorts of irregularities since the Ukraine war, and that will still be shrinking. Indonesia, negative as well. Everything else on the top 30 is, at the very least, positive. So we've got France, for example. It's growing, just 0.4%. But everything else positive. And we have those three: Indonesia, Russia, and Colombia among the top 30 that are negative. That's all I've got, Meghna. Anything to add, or shall we call it a podcast?
I think we can call it a podcast.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate Meghna joining us on short notice here. Hopefully we'll have Gordon back and well fed with croissants next week. And please look forward to our earnings scoreboard for the first quarter that we'll be running in our next issue. So thanks again, Meghna, and thanks everybody for listening.
Whether you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, please make sure to subscribe, rate us 5 stars, or leave us a positive review. This really helps us get the word out about the Airline Weekly Lounge, so we can continue to bring you this podcast every week, absolutely free of charge. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Skift channel and hit the notification bell to find out whenever a new video drops.